Hello, hi folks, and welcome to the first meetup of this year. Glad to see you all again, even though digital, but here we are. So I'm very happy to have a very special guest, Teri Frith, for our first meetup this year. Hey Teri,
Hi there.
yeah, how is it going?
Really well, thank you. Looking forward to this evening.
Amazing. So good stuff, Teri. Thanks for joining us. You are connecting from UK. Where about exactly?
Yeah, Bournemouth on the south coast of the UK.
Amazing, good stuff. Nice walks, cliffs, and everything.
Yeah, we have a beautiful beach here. I enjoy walking there.
Good stuff. Awesome. Thanks, Teri, for being here. So we've known Teri for, 3-4 years now. She's also been part of our very first retreat with Avanscoperta back in 2018. Live events in Bologna. It was wonderful couple of days together. But today we are here to talk about training from the back of the room, a workshop which Teri is going to be doing with us next month, and which we already did twice in person, and the principles behind it. It's very important, and we want to stress this from the beginning, that training from the back of the room also works remotely. We already did a beta test back in October with some of our learners. We're going to do another one in a few weeks' time. And today we are going to dig into some of the principles behind it and show that it can still provide value, even if we are all connecting from home. So the TBR, as we call the training from the back of the room, was invented by Sharon Bowman. And today with Teri, who is a certified TBR trainer, we're going to find out more about it. So we have a chat available on YouTube, so feel free to drop your comments, and we are going to read them out loud, and Teri is going to answer your questions. I already mentioned the workshop, so that's enough from me. And what we are going to do now is we are going to look at a nice short video on what is TBR Virtual Edition. Enjoy. Boom. Cool. That was a nice start, wasn't it, Teri?
Thanks very much, Enrico. So hopefully the video has started to paint a bit of a picture for you of what training from the back of the room is all about. So training from the back of the room, as Enrico said, is a book written by Sharon Bowman. And Sharon has 30 years plus experience as an author, a teacher, a trainer, a speaker. And the premise of training from the back of the room is the idea that traditional training with the teacher at the front doing all the talking while learners listened has nothing to do with the way that people actually learn. So training from the back of the room is about shifting the focus from you, the trainer, to your learners. And the trainer is no longer front and centre. The idea is that they've kind of shifted to the back of the room. It's about engaging learners the moment they enter the room and until the moment that they leave. And it's about bringing in a variety of activities to create opportunities for people to learn in different ways. And what we try and do with training from the back of the room is we try and hand over as much of the direct instruction as possible to the learners by setting up activities where they can take ownership of their learning. And so that means they can discover for themselves. So that means they can discuss, they can explain, they can debate. And by doing these things and interacting with the content, they can deepen their understanding. So with that in mind, I guess to start with, can I just ask you to take a moment and think about your own classroom? What do your learners look like? And here's an example of some of our learners in a training from the back of the room classroom in the in-person edition. And what you can see here is we've got people having conversations with each other, collaborating on an activity together, working separately, creating a plan for their training, working together, solving problems, and working on a card sort activity over in the top right corner there, where they've had to recall the information that they've learned and then apply it in an active way. So I was lucky enough to go to training from the back of the room with Sharon when she came over to the UK back in 2016. And the training from the back of the room class, even though I'd been teaching for years and I thought I really ought to know this stuff, when I attended it, it absolutely blew my mind. So the training from the back of the room class in the in-person version, so it covers three kind of really main elements, but me describing it now, I have to say it just scratches the surface. So the 6 trumps, which is 6 brain-based learning principles. So for example, movement trumps sitting, or writing trumps reading. It covers an instructional design tool, which is the 4 C's map, which is a fantastic tool that allows people to really simply design their training, but using really interactive principles that make sure that everybody gets what they need to from the learning. And the other kind of key element from training from the back of the room is the experience that you go through as the learner. You experience lots and lots of activities firsthand that you can go away and apply immediately. So, for example, I remember when we did the training with Sharon, and we were only about an hour into the first day, and Sharon turned to us and said, "You do realise you've done 6, 7, 8 different activities, all of which were under 5 minutes already, and we've only been here an hour." So this is kind of the ethos of training from the back of the room, this idea that there are lots of activities, and that you can learn in lots of different ways. And it's all underpinned by the fact that this is about the learner. The trainer moves to the side and helps the learner on their journey. So for me, as a teacher, it validated a lot of the stuff that I knew already about what works and what doesn't in the classroom from experience. And you learn that quite quickly because it's kind of a survival thing when you're working with students. You know straight away, oh, that fell flat, or no, that they've really got into this, let's do some more of it. But what I really took away from training from the back of the room was the why. I now understood why this bit works, why that bit doesn't. And that for me was huge, blew my mind. So I think the other thing to say about training from the back of the room is the way that it's done. It's so accessible. It's a really accessible introduction to the relevant facts about the brain. You don't need to be a neuroscientist to understand all of these details, because it's really easily presented in such a way that you can take it and straight away apply it into the classroom. So I know, Enrico, you were very keen to hear about the virtual edition, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that, unless there were any questions before I get into it.
Not as of now, Teri, but it was a brilliant explanation of what the basic principles of TBR are. We know it's just scratching the surface, let's put it this way. I'll be curious to know a bit more about what type of activities, for example, can be done very briefly. And as an example, when you said it's a set of exercises people can just do and take straight to their classroom and apply these principles straight away. Are there any examples before we move into the virtual bit?
So I think one of the things that was really quite powerful to me was just the idea that stopping and giving people a chance to discuss what you've just done is a really powerful thing that you can do. So the idea that actually we shouldn't be presenting for very long at a time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, before we need to put some sort of an activity in to make it an interactive lecture, for example. So the idea that you could stop after 10 to 15 minutes and just say, okay, before we go any further, let's just review what we've just done. And it can be as simple as just getting two people in the room to talk to each other about the main thing that they've just learned. So completely actionable, no effort required, just need to stop and give people the chance to review it. Okay, so if I then move on to talking about the virtual edition. So with the virtual edition, it's the same three elements that I talked about for the face-to-face. So the 6 brain-friendly learning principles, the 4 C's instructional design. So this is called a 4 C's map. And the idea here is that we go through 4 different steps to create learning that covers everything from connecting learners to each other right through to celebrating the learning at the end of the training. And again, a variety of repeatable learning activities. So these are directly applicable in the virtual environment because of the nature of doing the virtual edition. But there's also been some changes that you would notice if you attended one and then attended the other. So a big change in the virtual edition has been the format of the workshop. So it's been redesigned to reduce the cognitive overload of the long hours that it would take in front of a screen. There's no way we would do training from the back of the room as a 2-day online event. This is all about reducing it down. One of our trumps is actually shorter trumps longer. So it's been broken down into 5 modules of just 2.5 hours each, and it's spaced out over 3 weeks. Now, this is really great in terms of learning because the time between those workshops allows us to take a flipped classroom approach where most of the lecture segments of the class can now be consumed offline. So it means that the learners can take even more ownership of their learning. It means that they can go away, watch the video, read the book, try things out, come back and then be ready to apply what they've learned. It means that it allows us to focus on a more practical and collaborative activity set in the classroom or in the virtual classroom. And of course, all these activities will reinforce the independent learning. And I think it's important to stress at this point that if you're somebody who wants to just go to a training course online, turn up for the session, go away again, and not put any effort in between the sessions, then training from the back of the room virtual edition isn't really for you. This has been set up and designed so that you have got time to go away, you can do some more learning independently, you can come back and you can apply some of that learning in the class with the others. So another probably, well, obviously, but worth a mention, another big change to the virtual edition is the fact that obviously being online, we're using online tools. So that's actually, 3 substantial pieces of technology that maybe people haven't been using very much before. So for example, in the training course that I'll be running in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be using Zoom as our video conferencing tool. We'll be using Slack as our digital communication tool, and then we'll be using Miro as our collaborative whiteboard. And of course, because people aren't necessarily familiar with the particular tools that one of our training classes uses, we then have to build a little bit about how to use those tools in as part of the learning. So that's another change there. I think it's worth mentioning, actually, Enrico, another benefit to the space between the online classes, and this is one that I was really pleased about, is that you've got time to go and test stuff out. So you can learn something in module 1. I've already told you it's immediately actionable, so you can go and test that out in your classes with your learners before you come back to module 2 and let us know how you got on. And in fact, part of the warm-ups and follow-ups, which is sort of the work in between the sessions, is focused on go and test out this technique and see how you get on, come back and tell us about it. And of course, we can then build off of each other's learning experiences. And something I should mention about training from the back of the room is that it is built on this idea of a collaborative learning community. We do learn a lot from each other.
And I might point out that one of the reasons for not having all the days like back to back, one after the other, is exactly this, so that learners can go back, try it out, whether it's at their school or at work, and have time to kind of let it settle in their brains and really test it. Whereas before, you had 2 days program, because Teri or whoever was doing the training could also travel for those 2 days. We didn't have the luck to have Teri, for 3 weeks and come every couple of days to do the workshop for us. Whereas now you have this flexibility of trying things. Then thanks to Slack, of course, you can talk to all your other colleagues of the class, and as the whole point is about sharing experiences and learning from each other, that's also part of the learning. So it's almost a 3 weeks workshop, we can say.
Well, it's exactly right, because between those sessions, we are asking learners to do activities. We're asking them to post online, in our case on Slack, about what they learned or about what they thought. And we're actually getting those learners to comment on each other's thoughts. So it really does increase that sense of learning community. And I think in the long term, that's actually really, really valuable, because there are people I still talk to today to bounce ideas around off of with, oh, do you remember when we learned about this? Could that work here? So the idea that you can take that learning community forward is obviously a huge plus. So again, I do want to sort of give people the chance to, well, both stop for questions, but also even before that, one of the things that's really important through training from the back of the room and in general is that we do take a break, that we do stop. So I am just going to invite people, and I'm going to do it myself because I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. We've been here for 15 minutes now. I'm just going to give you the chance, if you're sat down and you're kind of in one position, to just kind of wiggle around, move, and get your oxygen to your brain by letting that blood flow. So I would just encourage people to have a little bit of a move around, even stand up, walk away, come back. Let's get that blood to the brain. Let's get the oxygen to the brain. Did you have any questions for me?
Yes, we do have one. Which thanks to the magic tool we are using today, I'm gonna show. So, is TBR useful for other roles other than teachers, like facilitators? Very interesting one.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I would say yes, definitely, because you are still, I think, as a facilitator, responsible for keeping your people engaged. So there are definitely some techniques that would apply across both learning and facilitating, including making sure that people do have those little breaks for movement, and including that people do get the opportunity to engage with each other. So other people that have actually come along to the face-to-face, who again it would apply to, I think, online. So we've trained a lot of our project managers, because again, project managers have to facilitate some of their project meetings, and they got a lot out of it too, in terms of understanding how to keep people engaged and focused on what it is that we're trying to achieve.
And we've seen it ourselves, I must say, in Avanscoperta, where we are a team of 4. Every now and then it comes handy, to do some of the TBR activities, because it just helps you to stay focused and get more out of each session. So it's definitely recommended for a whole range of professionals. I would, whenever I talk about it, is more like whoever is in charge of transmitting knowledge to others, whether it's a meeting or being a proper teacher or a facilitator. There's certainly something that you can get out of training from the back of the room, even if it's just that one principle, one idea that sticks in your mind, and then it's a good one.
Yeah, in fact, if I take the example of one of Sharon's 6 trumps, which is different trumps same, the idea that you mix up the activities as a facilitator so that people get that sense of variety, and the fact that we all kind of take things in different ways. So sometimes you don't reach somebody one way, but you will another. So this idea of bringing in that variety in facilitation, just as you would in a learning opportunity, is really important to help people to engage with it.
Absolutely. So we have another one, which I'll show. Yeah. So we have Antonio, who says, as far as I understood, there is a big self-learning ability involved in this approach. How can you be sure that the self-learning ability is sufficient? How do you direct them towards a fixed goal? Thanks, Antonio, for the question. Very interesting.
That's a great question. Thank you. So there is a responsibility for the learner here in that you do need to do some of the learning, but we do give you exactly what to do. So we give you a list of click on this link and watch this video, go to this page in this book and read this chapter. So we know that the content that you're getting is exactly what we're going to then be building on in class. And you have all of that guidance around what to do. And in addition to that, because you would then be posting on Slack, for example, where you've completed one of those activities and then you're playing back what it is that you learned, you would also be reading on Slack what the other learners had taken away from that piece of learning. So when you put all of this together, then you come back into the classroom and we're discussing again, okay, what did we learn here? How can we apply it? The hope would be that when you put all of that together, you should have enough guidance to get from it what we need you to learn.
That's super cool. Yeah, indeed. We've seen it as organizers as well. The Slack channel of the TBR, I must say, is one of the most, vibrant when it comes to offline discussions, because whoever is doing this is very passionate about it. Not that other people are not, but that's what we've noticed. With TBR, people really do get engaged a lot into the activities. So there is a lot going on every day, and someone is posting something that they found out, or
Yeah, that's
so there's
right.
a lot going on. It's not only in pure training from the back of the room fashion, is not the trainer training, but it's everyone learning from each other.
That's it. And it's really exciting to be a part of that. And so we absolutely make room within the workshops for people to post questions. And what we do is we talk about those questions, and actually everybody gets the chance to kind of offer their answers towards those questions. So it really does reinforce this kind of group learning ethos where you can collaborate and learn from each other. It's very powerful. So I have another sort of question that I was expecting to pose and answer myself a little bit. So is that okay to carry on with now, or were there more questions that I can answer from?
Let's carry on with that, and we'll have another chance later on to read other questions as they come along.
Brilliant. We really appreciate the questions coming in. It's lovely to be able to interact, because of course we can't see you. So one of the questions that I really wanted to answer, of course, is how does some of the brain-based learning principles apply when we go to the virtual environment? So I'm conscious that we have we've talked about how it can look in the classroom, but what does it look like when we go online? So if I talk about movement trumps sitting for a moment, in the normal classroom, in fact, let's go back. So in the normal classroom, it's really easy to create activities that involve movement as a natural part of the task. So dot voting on the wall, everybody gets up and they move across to the wall and they put their sticky dots on the wall. Or let's go over here and work in small groups. So again, it's really easy to get people to stand up and move into those small groups. Or go and collect this piece of equipment to do a task. It's over there on the table. Or an activity that's built for it, do a standing survey, which is where two people will walk over, talk together and ask each other questions to get answers. So all of those things are really easy to build in the classroom environment. But how does it work in the virtual environment? So it's not immediately natural in the virtual environment to just get up and move away from the screen or the webcam during the training. But it should be. We should be building in our frequent body breaks and encouraging our learners to move, a bit like I did with you a little while ago when I said, for goodness sake, move your arms and stretch and make sure that you get the circulation flowing. We know that when we move, blood circulation increases, more oxygen flows to the brain, and our brain cells work more effectively when they get more oxygen. So moving is helping us to learn. And with that in mind, we have to work out how to get our learners to do this when we're working online. Well, part of the deal here is make sure they understand it. Once you understand why it's so important to get that oxygen to the brain, then when we invite people to stand or stretch or wave their arms, they're more willing to do so because they understand why. And that's when we can bring in fun activities like miming a concept for others to guess, or leading a stretch movement for the rest of the group. It could be just simply, right, we're going to take a body break now, so please go walk over to the window, open the window, take a deep breath in, close the window, come back, because that's all it takes to get the circulation moving. And it's a great example of how we can bring that in the virtual world as well. So again, with this in mind, if you're sitting down watching this, I invite you to stand up and stretch or move around yourself. And I'm going to do the same.
I'm curious now. So does it apply also in the other way? Because I've been standing all the time. So should I do the opposite?
So that's an interesting one, because by standing, you're naturally going to be moving a little bit without even noticing it. But I would still encourage you to move around. And obviously, if you sat down right now, you would be moving from your standing position. So either way, it's getting the circulation going.
So one way or another, the important bit is to basically change your position and, change your physical status in a way. That's
move
good.
Around.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's other elements too that aren't even necessarily specific to training from the back of the room, which is that we know that if people are sat at the computer screen all day, it's important to just change your view so that you kind of have your near distance, far distance sight. And that's just important for things like eye strain and things like that. So I'm not an expert in that area by any stretch, but these are just some of the kind of happy byproducts of getting up and moving.
Interesting, good stuff. And also some of it common sense, right? But once you put it in the frame of, activities to help your brain learn, it makes so much more sense.
That's right. So another example then, so we've just talked about movement trumps sitting, and another example of one of the brain principles is the idea that images trump words. Now, obviously, again, in the classroom, we have many different posters up and around the area, and we have lots of interesting things going on the tables. So how do you translate that into being online in the virtual environment? So what we do in that kind of case is we're looking at, okay, how can we bring images in? Well, first of all, we have our collaborative whiteboard. So, I mean, these are some very simple examples of how straight away it's quite an engaging, colourful example in front of you there, which can just be really quick and easy to create on the whiteboards that exist. Obviously, you can then bring in more images to those as you like to. You've got the image of the people on screen in front of you. And of course, you've got the opportunity to kind of read facial expressions as well. And what's lovely about being online is that you still have access to all the analog tools that you would normally have. So you can hold up your image. You can draw a picture and hold up your image to the camera and everyone can see it. In fact, I wonder if I've got an example of that here. So there we go. So where you've got people holding up pictures there, you could have drawn anything on that image, which I think is a lovely example of how we can do both. So we take the digital, but we still keep our analog abilities as well, drawing pictures and holding them up. So another example then, I wanted to show you a little bit of what this looks like in action. So we've got a couple of examples on the slide here where these are actually two of our learners taking us through their 4Cs map. And so this is kind of what the experience feels like. Obviously, you're sat on your own in front of your computer, but you can see we're all kind of straining, looking at the screen as they're talking us through their 4Cs map. And again, you have the opportunity to get really creative with how those 4Cs maps look. Yeah, pen and paper never going away.
Never. But again, tools like Miro and Mural as well, we need to somehow mention them. They are very helpful in this. So it's basically for those of you who don't know them, which I doubt by now, because after 1 year of remote, everyone has, I guess, at least heard about them. They are basically digital whiteboards where people can, as Teri just shown, write, put post-its, and do all kind of stuff. Surely it's not the same, but it's the same. So That's what we're going to use in the workshop as well. So the visual aspect never goes away, but again, pen and paper and showing the sign still applies fully.
That's right. And another example of this is actually 3D objects. So for example, you can ask your learners to go, which includes movement, to find for some sort of a 3D object anywhere in their home to represent a concept that you've been describing. And again, we've had some lovely examples of this, which brings it to life for everybody. And of course, then you get this kind of camaraderie and this engagement where we all try and find ways to kind of bring ourselves together when we are just in this virtual environment. And of course, that's a safety element, because one of the things about training from the back of the room is this sense of it's okay to ask questions, we can learn. So it's a safe environment to make mistakes, ask questions, test out ideas. And so I suppose it's worth mentioning there, one of the things that we do encourage is that people have their video camera switched on throughout the learning. And there's a couple of elements to that as well, because on the one hand, it's helpful for the trainer because you can kind of see and read the room a little better if you can see what people's expressions are. But it's also really helpful for the learners where you can see, I didn't really understand that, but that guy looks confused and that guy looks confused. So do you know what? Actually, I'm ready to ask my question. It's okay because we're kind of all in this together. Okay, so I think that's probably a bit of a summary or a bit of a taste of what to expect for a training from the back of the room experience. I mean, there's beyond that, there's lots of different ways to apply it. Really, it's up to you and your imagination of the ways that you can do things. And I think really it's about putting yourself in the position of the learner. If I was the learner, what's my experience going to be? So when I walk in the door, I want to be engaged. How does that translate to virtual? Well, it means that when you turn up online, straight away, they let you in. Straight away, you have a conversation with the person in the class to say, hey, welcome, come on in, and this is what we're doing today, and have a look over here. And you can actually get engaged even before you join the class, because there's often going to be a warm-up task. So particularly with training from the back of the room, there's a warm-up task where you can go in and you can introduce yourself and you can find out about the other learners before you even start the class. So really, we're just trying to translate all the principles that we have in day-to-day and take it into the virtual environment.
That's brilliant, Teri. I was just trying to find some feedback that we had from the last, when was it? In October, when we did the test, to show that actually we've already done this even remotely. So we did two. Of course, training from the back of the room exists. There's other trainers doing that. But the virtual one, we did it already in October, and we had some of our learners trying it for the first time with us, and they were enthusiastic. So one of them that I copied in the chat now was from Marco Heimsoff, who is also another trainer of ours. So he says, I've been working throughout training from the back of the room virtual edition and can recommend it to all the trainers and teachers among my friends. It connects well with the Thinking Fast and Slow and Adminton's work on psychological safety. That's also a very important bit that Teri just touched on right now. Make people feel welcome, create a connection straight away, and that's part of it. A method on how to teach in a way that brain learn. So again, it's not sitting down and listening to that expert talking, but being engaged and learning yourself.
Yeah, it was great working with Marco, and in fact the whole group. It was we had a lot of fun moments actually, and I think some of the questions that were asked during it, which enabled everybody to learn, was just another really. It was a really enjoyable experience, by the way that the group kind of connected with each other, where we did share our ideas and our experiences, where we were able to learn from each other. And so, I mean, what we're really describing here is something called a connection, the way that we connect to the other learners, and that's a huge part of training from the back of the room as well. So the first step in the instructional design model, the 4 C's, is to connect, and it's about connecting with other learners, it's connecting with the content, and it's about connecting with your own personal goals and what you're trying to get out of it. And I think what's really nice about TBR is that you can stop and reflect as you go along each step of the way. What have I learned now? How can I apply that? And I think when you kind of walk away at the end of it, and we had some lovely pictures of kind of people's reaction to it, there were pictures of people with, you know, mind exploding and ideas and light bulb moments, and it was really lovely. So yeah, can't wait to do it again, Enrico. Really enjoyed it.
Oh yes, in just, what is it, 2-3 weeks time, we're doing it again. We have the last 3 seats. If you didn't understand it enough, we love this TBR training. We like to do it with Teri. And so we have the last 3 seats available. We hope you are able to join us. I'm going to quickly show where you can find it. So that's on Eventbrite. You can start from Avanscoperta's website as well. And that's where you'll find it. There's a description. There's also, I tried to capture some of the things that Teri was saying during the meetup by having the banners showing the concepts, but some things I've probably missed. But you'll find all the resources on the, actually it's here, on the website. And for further information, I know that Teri had one slide, if we want to show that.
Ah, yes.
Let's see. But of course, Avanscoperta's website is the go-to place for all information.
Yes, so this link is to Sharon Bowman's Training from the Back of the Room website, where there are lots of learning resources where you can kind of start to get a flavour of what Training from the Back of the Room is all about.
Cool. So we close with a question. Let's read it. Let's see if we have an answer. Can't guarantee, but here we go. Full transparency.
Yeah, so there isn't a single, like a one particular way in which training from the back of the room copes with disabilities. What we always do is we would try and adapt to the learners. So if we understand what the disability is, then of course that we would adapt to it. So if I give you the example of, we might have an activity that is to stand up, but if somebody couldn't stand up, but maybe they can raise their arms, that's an option. If somebody is hard of hearing, then we would look for ways to, perhaps we would be, because there's a kind of a producer and a trainer pair always in the virtual edition. So the producer would then be helping with perhaps typing things in so that they had a visual representation of what was being said. So depending on what the disability might be, then we would always look to adapt to it. But ultimately, it's about being flexible and adapting to the learners.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, so part of this is actually, let me see, why can't I show? Yeah, so part of the whole process, it was like this before we moved to the digital world, but now it's even more important is that for each workshop, we do a check-in. We send out a warm-up form. So that's purely Avanscoperta way of doing things. We just check with participants what's their level of expertise, of if there's any special needs and what's not. This certainly falls into that category. So whenever there's a special need of any kind, we try and find out as early as we can so that we can work around it. Which is basically what Teri was saying before. So before, it might have been you enter a classroom and you find out about this kind of situation. Now, in this remote scenario, we need to be a bit more aware of that from the get-go. So we try and find out from the beginning. And this not only applies to training from the back of the room, but we tend to do it for, other workshops as well. Cool, Antonio, thanks for that. And I guess we are about to close, so there's the last couple of minutes for questions. You know where to find us. Otherwise, I guess we will see you, well, with Teri. The workshop starts on the 15th of March. And then with Avanscoperta, we are doing another couple of meetups in the coming weeks that you will get to know about if you subscribe to our channel, which we recommend you do, and or to our newsletter, and follow us on social media. So I guess that is it. Teri, do you want to add anything else?
No, just to say thank you for having me today, and I hope people do think about what their learners' experiences are when they leave today.
Yes, of course, this was not the full workshop. Otherwise, we wouldn't be, doing anything in our lives. But we hope it was, a starting point for all of you, those who knew already, or those who didn't know about it. To, is the seed of curiosity to, start investigate this topic, which is really cool. Since all of us have somehow to, as I referred to before, pass knowledge onto others. Training from the back of the room can be a game changer. We've seen it with our trainers. Some workshops have been completely redesigned after Teri's course. So big responsibilities, but big success as well, as we say. So yeah, we hope to see you again. Thanks, Teri. It was a pleasure having you with us. And that is it, I guess. So I'll leave you with the website in case you want to find out more. And to the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.